I'm so excited to introduce this week's Changemaker guest, someone whose story of compassion, service, and purpose-driven action will stay with you long after the episode ends. That I promise. Hello and welcome to the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Hope Grinwald. My guest this week is Luke Mickelson, founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a remarkable nonprofit dedicated to ensuring that no child sleeps on the floor in their town. Again, no child sleeps on the floor in their town. What began as a simple act of service in his Idaho garage has grown into a nationwide movement, building tens of thousands of beds each year for children who need a safe place to sleep. Luke shares not just the origin of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, but the moment that changed everything. The moment he saw the face of a child receiving their very first bed after sleeping on the floor for years. Not only did that child sleep on the floor, but that child also slept in her mother's car. That look of relief, joy, dignity is the heartbeat of this entire mission, and it's why thousands of volunteers across the country continue to show up. They build, they deliver, and they change lives one bed at a time. Luke has been honored on platforms such as CNN Heroes, returning the favor with Mike Rowe, NBC Nightly News, Good Morning America, The Today Show, and so many more. To learn more about Luke's incredible work or to find out how you can best support this life-changing mission and possibly also lead a chapter in your state, visit shpbeds.org, shpbeds with an S at the end, .org. Now, don't forget to subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast, making sure you never miss an episode filled with powerful stories, meaningful conversations, inspiring changemakers, and tons of connections. So please go to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. And of course, follow us on social media at Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. I am so grateful that Luke reached out to me after hearing me speak with another podcast guest on a prior episode and wanting to share his story here. If you have a life-changing story and are interested in becoming part of the Today's the Day Changemakers ecosystem, please reach out. Jody, Jodi, Jody, at todayisthedayliveit.com. Now, if you're ready for motivation, connection, and a reminder that one decision can change everything, this is the episode for you. Also, fun side note, Luke is cousin to none other than Donny Osmond. You'll hear a little bit about that in the episode. Stay tuned. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am your host, Jody Hope Grinwald, and I am thrilled to every single week just speak to the change makers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today, I'm so excited to interview Luke Mickelson. Luke just reached out to me to talk about being on my podcast from being on another, listening to another one of my guests speak. And that to me is just a great honor. So Luke, thank you so much for that.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's good to be on. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm going to read just a little of your bio, but I can't wait to really learn even more about your story because I learn with the listeners. And for those who are looking on YouTube, we were laughing about the fact that the sun just wants to hit my face in weird ways. So we're just going with it today.
Yeah, just go with it.
Yeah, exactly. Luke is the founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. I love the name. He grew up a hardworking farm kid in the small town of Kimberly, Idaho, which I have to be honest, I have not heard of. So I'm looking forward to learning more about Kimberly, where community, character, and service were simply a way of life. An avid athlete and lifelong competitor, he poured his energy into youth programs, coaching, and mentoring, developing both a passion for people and a natural talent for leadership. The same drive carried into his professional career in business, but something was missing. And in 2012, driven by a desire to make a deeper impact, Luke founded Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a 501c3 nonprofit organization with the simple but powerful message of no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. We're going to go on from there, but I will mention his work has been recognized on Mike Rowe's Returning the Favor, CNN Hero Top 10 finalist, NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, Good Morning America, The Today Show, People Magazine, and even American Ninja Warrior, which we definitely should talk about. These platforms have celebrated his unwavering dedication to what calls the human helping human philosophy, which I love that, human helping human. And today he travels the country as a keynote speaker, guest, and podcast host, inspiring authors to embrace the power of tiny moments that create massive impact. And I can go on and on. There's pieces of it I've missed because there's so much I want to talk to you about, Luke. How does it feel to hear all of that?
Oh, it seems like a lot, but when you live it, it didn't seem like that much. It's I don't know. Sometimes you feel like you're talking about someone else, but it sure is. It's been a wild ride and one that however I got here, I'm sure grateful for. Let's put it that way.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about Kimberly, Idaho, where you were
Yeah.
born, because I don't know if a lot of my listeners know
Yeah.
where Kimberly, Idaho is. And I will tell you, most of my listeners are from the US, but second is in Germany. So I don't think people in Germany might know a lot about Kimberly, Idaho.
Actually, what's funny about that, Jody, is, oh man, this was, I want to say, probably 2018, right about, and we'll get into when Mike Rowe showed up and kind of blew us up. But I got a funny call from this. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was called Live, I think, but it was a German series, a German producer that was like running stories. I think they got the story honestly from the CNN Heroes. Like they were going to some of the CNN Heroes past nominees, and I was one of them. So they came to my little town of Kimberly, Idaho, and they did this segment on us, which was filmed in Germany, and it was really neat. It was hard to find, but they sent me some links and I saw it, and it was kind of cool to hear your story in German.
Oh my
You know?
gosh, that's just funny. I usually don't even mention the fact that the second country that listens and
Oh,
downloads is
really?
Germany, and I just so happened to do that. So the universe, just weird things come up in
Line it
conversation.
up. I'll have to send you a link to it
Please.
so you can maybe share it. It was fun, I didn't know really kind of the angle of what they were doing, other than they just wanted to highlight someone that was doing good, and so that's what we went with.
Well, I love that people are finding you. You found me,
Mm,
but and those are gifts when people can do
yeah,
that, and that
sure.
people are finding out more about your work. But let's go back to Kimberly, Idaho,
Yeah,
and you growing
yeah.
up. So
Little
tell us
Kimberly,
about a little Luke. Tell us
little
about Luke.
little little bulldog over here. Yeah, being from a small town, everybody knows. Well, if you know Sleeping on the Peace, you think of Twin Falls, Idaho, which is the town, the bigger town close by. But really, I lived in this small town, and you know, being in a small town, I tell everybody there's pros and cons just with everything. I mean, you know everybody. And you know everything about everybody, but they also know you, and they know everything about you. So that's kind of the bad part of it. Pros and cons, but I loved living in a small town. It was a farming community. If you knew how to pick up a ball, didn't matter what shape it was. If you knew how to throw it in the right direction, you had to play sports because there was no one else, right? We had less than 400 people in our high school, grades 9 through 12. And I enjoyed it because I loved working with and teaming up with my fellow classmates and being in a group setting. I never really enjoyed doing things on my own, right? I was just a group guy, right? And so being in a small town and getting to know everybody. I mean, I knew everybody in my high school by name, by heart. Didn't matter what grade you were in, and that was great. I enjoyed that atmosphere, and I think that kind of developed me into who I am today, enjoying service. Of course, if you couldn't tell, my career was outside sales, so I don't have a problem. I had a guy at a gambling table. We were playing blackjack, and he looked at me and he's like, "You're a salesman, aren't you?" And I'm like, "How do you know that? I don't understand how you know that, but I must give off this salesman vibe." But no, I take that back to being in a small town and growing up with friends and having to have friends and dealing with those small town challenges and the small town blessings that come from that. It was a great place to grow up.
It's funny. I came from New York, and so that's far from small town. I didn't live in Manhattan, but Brooklyn,
Oh,
Staten
geez, yeah.
Island. Yeah, but I have longed for small town life,
Yeah.
like a tree lighting type of situation, and everybody knowing everybody, and going in and knowing, the baker, the person who owns the bakery, and the person
Yeah.
who works at the post office and those kinds of things. I've longed for that. So we're on opposite sides here. And I understand about like we don't want everybody to know our business, but there's something I think very special about
Yeah.
potentially that family atmosphere and having that as a connection, right? If you need anything, typically people will be there to support you, I would think.
You know what's interesting too is like I had never actually been to New York City, not until the Returning the Favor with Mike Rowe shut up. You know, and we'll get into that. But to have these producers and these film crews come from New York, the big New York City, you know, it was interesting talking to them. You know, most of them never owned a car. Right? They walked everywhere. They didn't need one, which you understand. Like the closest neighbor to me was could be several miles away. I mean, it just blew my mind. Right? You know, to get up and say, "Hi, I gotta go into town," which is 10 miles away. To think of life without a car or life that didn't involve travel, it was really foreign to me. And but I appreciate it. I've since been to New York City, which is just amazing to visit.
Yes, to visit. I agree with you.
Yeah, but no, I'm telling you, Jody, you'd love a small town. You know, you get this community feel, and really, this plays heavily, I think, heavily into my story, into my character of I'm about community. I'm about let's do this together. Let's bring this together, and that's one thing I found with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, is the sense of community and knowing that this problem that we're dealing with is a community problem, and it's one that needs to be solved by the community, and I know we'll get into this, but knowing that I'm just a small town kid from Idaho that doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to running a nonprofit, right? But what I do know is how to get people involved and how to get people excited and share a passion that I didn't know that I even had, and creating hopefully some passion in other people that helping them realize that, you know what, you can do it as well. And there's people around you that you can do it with, so that I think that small town community really played a part in that development for me.
I love that. And I'm all about my whole platform's about connection and connecting with others, right? And how they can help lift you up and lead you or you lead them. It's a give and take situation. But when you were growing up, what were you thinking you were going to be when you grew up?
Well, I mean, depending on how far back you go, right? I mean, at some point I was going to be the next, Babe Ruth, and then it turned into football, so I was going to be a Joe Montana, Then my cousin, who happens to be Donnie Osmond, I was going to be a singer, then I was going to be it went through these series of interests as we call it. But I always had a real interest in service, like in helping other people. I was raised by a single mom. My parents divorced when I was about 13. I just entered high school, and and it wasn't really a big surprise to me. My dad wasn't super big into the picture anyways. But it was great to have that sense of I was the man of the house, right? and I've got an older brother. He was much older than me and gone, but I had three other sisters. So I tell everybody I was in a small town. I was the best dressed kid in the town,
Oh yeah.
But I had to live with three sisters and a mom, so it was I knew how to behave. Let's put it that way. But I think that developed into a love for people, a love for the opportunity to connect with others, and which carried me into the sales field. Right? I quickly learned that sales isn't so much about the product. I mean, that's part of it. But it's trying to understand the person's needs and what they're saying to you, and just becoming a better listener than a lecturer type thing.
Well, it's connection. And that's what I
Yeah.
say. Everything we do, sales is about connecting. Even
Correct.
the car we buy, we buy it because we connect with it, the color, the what it can do. Every single thing we do in our life is back to that again. But I think we need to go back to, is your cousin really Donnie Osmond?
I was waiting if you
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like, he went over that so quickly.
I breezed by that, didn't I? Oh yeah. So he's like my dad's cousin. So he's like my second cousin once removed. I don't know how that works, but Oh yeah, my mom and dad, they've been shopping with Marie back in the day.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of concerts, went backstage with them. I mean, he when my dad passed away, oh, it's been about 10 years now. He sent a message because he thought, at least he sounded like he thought well of my dad, um,
Aw.
and so yeah, oh, good old at some point, Jody, some point. I'm gonna get with Donnie and we're gonna have a concert or something for Sleep and Emily Peace. We haven't.
I was gonna wait. I was gonna say he needs to be the spokesperson. If he's listening right now,
I
he needs to
know
be the,
he
the
should he
spokesperson.
should listen. He should listen, Jody.
Exactly. Well, to be honest with you, he's always been. I mean, I watched the Donnie Murray show. Who didn't way back when? I'm
Right.
aging myself a little, but it was, well, yeah. And I just always had a fondness for him. He's just, yeah.
Oh, and the family, which I'd speak highly of it. It's my family. They are what they seem. They're just really real people, honest, nice people that just if you look at his life, he's still married to the same woman. They have. You can just tell by his character he's just a nice guy, and so I come from some really good roots. Let's say
You
that.
do. You've got good roots, and you're doing great things. So let's
Mm.
talk about the leap from sales into sleep in heavenly peace and how, I mean, it is a leap, right?
Oh yeah,
Nonprofit experience
yeah,
to, going from for profit to nonprofit, and then not just working for an organization, starting one. Very
yeah.
different.
Yeah, it is very. The story is a fairly simple one, but in the growth, my growing up, in a small town, and then coming out of graduating, I served a mission for my church. I always had this sense of service and wanting to help other people, and so I remember some really good advice I got from my mission president. He said, Luke, whatever you decide to do, whatever avenue or profession you go into, always look at it as serving other people. And I've really tried to take that to heart because I think, otherwise it just becomes a paycheck and that's never a good way to live. So I always looked at ways that I could serve it. And I was in water treatment, which means, I mean, a vast um, explanation, but basically, I helped large companies with their water, and so I became and felt like I was an important part of their process. Right, if something went down, the plant went down, which means they didn't make any money, and they had to call on me. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed coming in, kind of being the savior, if you will, of hey, this is what we need, and here's the game plan. Let's get together and do this and that. Um, and so, but with all this being said and all this great stuff, I mean, I had three kids. I was coaching. I was very active in my church. I worked with the youth at the time. I was what was called a young men's president, which basically in the South is kind of like a youth pastor. Although, please do not consider me a pastor. But I really honestly I just enjoyed working with the kids, being a coach and being excited about building relationship with them and turning them into young men. So the program ran from about ages 12 to 16, 17, something like that. And I was really responsible for the spiritual growth, but also the activity arm of the church, which at the time was Boy Scouts, right? So I was kind of like the leader of the Boy Scouts. I led the older group, and then kind of supervised the Boy Scout leaders and all that. Well, like many of your listeners that might deal with or have been a Boy Scout leader or been a Boy Scout themselves, especially nowadays, those are challenging times. you know,
Yes.
or even if you have a 12 to 16-year-old son, finding an activity that doesn't involve a screen or a controller or a console is a big challenge nowadays, especially one that they're going to enjoy. And so, I was always on a search, me and the leaders, of trying to find ways that we can get these boys out from behind a screen and involved. And it came up, and I will say this too. Me in my personal life, and I don't share this all the time, Jody, but I was 35, and I was going through something. I don't know. People might call it a midlife crisis, but to me, it was. I wasn't stressed out. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need this. No, it was actually quite the opposite. I felt I was successful. I had a good job. I had a family. I was coaching. you know, but something was missing. I just didn't feel like I was who I was supposed to be or were doing what I was supposed to. There was just something missing. And and this spiral down just got it just was like a slow burn, it just I couldn't figure it out. And I'm a guy that, you know what, I can see the path ahead of me. I'm gonna go after it. In sports, that was me. Let's go, 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 right? And when that isn't as clear as it should be, I feel stuck. And that's kind of where I was. I was very successful in business. In fact, I was going to be buying the company from my stepdad, and I was excited about it. But I wasn't. There was just something missing. And also part of the story is, being that age, and you start thinking for yourself more, and you start really analyzing your life. And long story short, I had a little bit of a faith crisis. I didn't know who I was and what I wanted to believe and how I believed it. I believed this way of thinking for 35 years. Is it really what was good for me? So all of these things were kind of culminating and twirling around in my brain. Meanwhile, I'm trying to inspire these boys to be good, healthy young men and trying to find good activities. So I'm with all that going on, I'm sitting in a meeting, and I'll never forget it. I'm sitting in this leadership meeting, and we were with other auxiliary members of the church, and we were talking about members and community members that we were helping, right? Whether it was helping with rent or food or transportation. And one family came up specifically. They talked about a family. She was the local school bus driver, and her husband suffered from some mental health, couldn't hold a job, and so of course they were struggling, right? And they were in. Keep in mind, I'm 4,000 population town, small town. I knew what I thought I knew every square inch of that town. Not a lot of things to do in the winters of Idaho. You can go and find all sorts of mischief. Well, they lived in this apartment that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know it was even there. That's how remote and hidden it was. And so they were talking about how they were helping them. Well, in a passing, fleeting sentence, someone mentioned that they didn't have beds for their kids, and it kind of hit me. I was like, I want to say I almost missed it, and I think everybody else did. But I was like, wait. Did you just say they don't have any beds? Like, what do you mean? They don't, like, the kids are literally sleeping on the floor? And they're like, well, that's what we understand. Yes. And I tell you what, I don't know, Jody. I don't know if it hit everybody else the same. I don't think so. Cause it was like a smack across the head with a 2x4. I instantly thought of my own kids. I instantly thought of what it would be like and the life experience that they would have sleeping on the floor. And it just hit me. I just was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, is that a real thing? Like, nowadays in the country, in the day and time we live in, these kids don't have a bed to sleep in. And then the second thought hit me. I'm like, okay, here is a great opportunity that I can take these young men, these Boy Scouts, on our Wednesday night activities. I can take an Xbox controller out of their hands and put a drill in it and teach them. We're gonna build a bed, right? Now, I've never built a piece of furniture in my life, Jody. Now, I wasn't a stranger to tools or anything. However, I do joke that I did have to steal some of my wife's tools, but we won't go into that. But no, I sat down with the boys and I told them what was the situation, and I said, what kind of suggestions do you have? And then, at first they come up to, we could go buy one or we can get one donated, whatever. And I said, how about we build one? And I don't know, the thought of saws and drills and stuff like that piqued their interest enough that they said, sure, let's do that. And really, they didn't have a choice. My mind was already was already made up. So I remember that night I went back to my house, and we had bought a bunk bed for my son a long time ago. And my daughter was sleeping in it, and I ran right downstairs, tape measure in hand, and was measuring things and looking at this and drawing this up in my head, and blueprints for NASA was going through my head, right? But I could see it for whatever reason, Jody. I could see it already mapped out exactly how I wanted to do it, what tools, what pieces of wood, how it was going to come together. It was just crystal clear, and so that's what we ended up doing. So I went and bought all the lumber. I bought the tool or the materials needed. And the boys came over and we started building this bunk bed for this family. It was, and I was a little worried, to be honest with you. Didn't involve a screen, didn't involve a game. It wasn't exactly warm. We're talking, it was almost exactly to this day. Well, it was about a week ago, I guess, in 2012. So it was, 13 years ago. We were in the middle of my garage in a cold Idaho winter. Wasn't exactly comfortable, but I tell you what, I was pleasantly surprised watching these boys and their excitement grow as we grabbed pieces of wood and handed them back and forth and started drilling drills and sanding wood and creating this little miracle.
I have to stop you there. It's so incredible for those who are listening who are feeling, and there's a lot of people out there, Luke, we know it, that
Mhm.
were where you were. I was there. I didn't know what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. I
Mhm.
was in a great job making good money, and I felt almost selfish
Yeah.
for not feeling
Yeah.
fulfilled enough.
Yes.
It was, and I felt bad about feeling bad. So that was even worse, right?
Yep.
And
Yep. I hear
you
you,
know,
sister.
I know. You're like, how can I feel bad? Everything looks
Oh.
on paper, everything looks wonderful. Like,
Oh
what is
yeah.
wrong with me?
Well, and then to throw in, doubting your faith and this belief that you had, am I being led down the devil's path? I had just all these crazy, what is going on with me? I feel like a good guy. Like I feel like I haven't changed per se of what I want to be, which is a good, honest, hardworking guy. What is going on? Like, why do I still feel such? Why do I still feel such a hole where otherwise people would be so blessed to be in my shoes? It just didn't seem fair.
You felt selfish, right? I felt
Selfish.
selfish.
Yeah.
I know exactly. And for me, it was I was working at the American Lung Association. I put together an event and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was spending so much time being very upset about not that and feeling that selfish feeling. And this
Hmm.
woman stood up who I brought to an event to be a speaker at a women's event. And
Hmm.
she started to bring those people on a journey of as she was talking. They were laughing, they were crying, they were connecting. And I just watched the whole crowd do that. And I said, I want to be her. Like it was this
Hmm.
moment. I will not kid you when I tell you it was snowing in the background and a beam of sun came across this woman's face while
Hmm.
she was talking. I'm standing
Hmm.
in the back of the room and I share this because I understand what you said. You almost missed the moment.
Yeah.
I almost missed the moment. I was standing in the back of the room as those of us who worked there did. And I paid attention to that moment and it
Yeah.
brought me in and it said, you need to go back and you get your certification and work with people and help them on their career path
Oh,
and
wow.
leaders and all of that, which is what I'm doing. But I had the fears. I had all those things.
Oh,
Like you
yeah.
said, I don't know how to build and I've never built anything. I'm borrowing tools.
I
Like, I get it.
I tell you what, someone's going to think that you and I have rehearsed this because I give my speeches, my keynote speeches about tiny moments, about moments that they're little inspirations that we so often just kick to the side. We have excuses, too busy, not I can't do that, or that's not going to make that big of a deal. All these little excuses and reasons why we don't act on these tiny moments that they almost pass you by, and a lot of times they do. And like I love the beam of light that's you talked about streaming. Trust me, you don't know where it comes from. You don't know. I mean, I build furniture for children for my job. If you would have said that 10 years ago, I'd have said, what are you talking about? I mean, it's just it's finding that passion, and most of the time, I would say most of the time, very rarely have I ever seen it, maybe not even anybody that has not found their passion that didn't come from some small tiny moment that required some action. It required them to, quote, for me, get off the couch, and for you to stand up and listen, right?
Yeah.
It's extremely important because you know, and this is kind of a little bit of my platform of empowering people to know that these tiny moments, although they might not turn into a big national charity or an awesome podcast, but they will help. Everything that you do has a cause and effect, and that cause and effect is either for the good or for the bad. and we get to choose and decide how that outcome comes, but we've got to do something about it, you know?
Yes, I always say it's one small or large step
Mhm.
every day, every day to get yourself closer to your goal. And for me, I was the child who wanted to hide under the desk if the teacher ever
Yeah,
called on me. So, when I talk to my listeners through this, and even when I talk to my clients through coaching, I'm always like, where you are right now. This is not going to be where you end up.
right.
There's going to be
Yeah,
things that come in. You're going to be bobbing and weaving, and forks in the road are going to come, and decisions are going to have to be made. And those decisions will actually wind up impacting people you may never
never
even
know.
meet.
Yep, yep.
But if you make no decision and you sit on that couch and you live in that fear space and stay paralyzed in it,
Yeah.
you miss out on so many brilliant moments and connections and a
Oh
feeling
yeah.
of fulfillment that you can't describe to another person.
Excuse me. Well, I remember, after we got done building the bed with the scouts and delivered the bed. I didn't get to go on the delivery because I had to stay back and clean my garage up. I mean, it was a mess, you know. But the next day at church, they talked about and shared with me. Oh my gosh, yes, the feeling and the joy that these little kids. Keep in mind, these are. I'm trying to remember. They're 7, 8, 9 years old, something like that. And they were young kids. Never had a bed. What I mean, and to be able to bring them to bed, I mean, I was excited for the boys to see that, right? To feel the joy of service, to see the joy that comes from hard work. But I'll be honest with you, I was really jealous too, because I didn't get a chance to experience it. Which I mean, it all plays a big role in here because that night, or at least a couple of days later, this hole. I could feel this hole getting draining again, or at least showing up again because it got filled. It got filled last week doing this project, and here I am sitting on the couch, me and my kids. Some Xbox game commercial came on, and being Christmas time, I just knew I knew it was coming. Right? Oh, Dad, we want this game for Christmas. It was an innocent request, but for me, here I was struggling internally with who I am and what I want to be and how I want to make a difference, and am I making the difference that needs to be? Is my job, is my faith, is my all of these activities, these things that I'm doing that I think are right, aren't really fulfilling me until I did that. Until I knew that building a bed for a child brought so much joy to me. I wanted that for my kids. And I saw it in the Boy Scouts too. So I remember thinking, listen, Luke, I can sit and wallow in this state that I'm in, which I'm not going to. That's not me. I know it's not me. And I could sit here and tell my kids, which I already had, about this great experience I had building beds with the Boy Scouts and delivering them. Or I can put my feet 2 inches. I was just 2 inches off the ground, right? I can slap my feet down, stand up. I had extra wood in the garage. I can go build another bed, and I can bring my kids with me. And that's what I did. I mean, I didn't say any. I just stood up and walked to the garage door. And I remember my wife was cooking dinner. She's like, where are you going? I said, you know what? I've got extra wood. I'm going to build another bed, and I'm going to make the kids come with me, right? And I tell you what, best decision of my life, because not only did I mean, I had my little daughter who was, I think, 7 at the time, in her little pink tutu out there, and my son in his Boise State jersey, drilling holes. We had the best time, and I would never take those moments away, because not only did my kids see that their dad, cared, but I wanted them to feel the joy of service, and I wanted them also to see and appreciate the things that they had. They didn't need another Xbox game. You know why? Because just down the road, there's kids that didn't have beds. You know, and so really, I still had no idea that child bedlessness was even a thing. Like, I didn't know any family that had kids sleeping on the floor. The only one I knew, we just built a bed for, right? So it was more about the experience that I wanted my kids to have. And so, when we finished it a couple of days later, here I was, this bunk bed sitting in the middle of my garage. I had no idea what to do with it. It's just like, okay, here it is. And I remember my wife at the time said, why don't you post this on a buy sell trade group on Facebook? And I'm like, a what? No idea. I wasn't a Facebook guy. I'd post, pictures of my sturgeon that I catch once in a while, but I mean, I was not a social media guy, and so she kind of told me about it, and I'm like, really? Like, you want me to put on the public page a free bed? You know what's going to happen, right? So, I mean, I put it out there, and I was ready for every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the planet to say, "Oh, a free bed, yeah, you know."
Right.
And I tell you what, I was so pleasantly surprised. Although we did get a little bit of that, what we got was two things. What I got was two things. I saw and read stories of families and the situations they were in that were just unbelievable. Fires that took their entire house down, right? In fact, one of the first deliveries I ever went on, it was a family of 8 that had been living in a van. I mean, it just, I didn't know that that existed in my, and we're from a pretty, you know, pretty rich, not rich, but not certainly not a poverty stricken location in Idaho. I mean, it's kind of a wealthy area,
Right.
but it was right in my own backyard, and I just it blew me away. And then the second thing I found out was all of my friends and even strangers were like, "Hey, you know what? That sounds great. What do you need? Do you need a tool? Do you need a mattress? Do you need a sheet?" I mean, I had people coming all over the place wanting to help, which was just amazing. I mean, it's just I remember thinking, man, I might have something here that again, here I am bringing the community together. I'm the guy. Let's get everybody together and have a party. And the rubber really hit the road for me when I went on my first delivery. So in a friend of mine lived about 30 minutes away. She was in the social work space and had a family that had just come out of homelessness. And this is my Haley story. So Haley was a 6-year-old girl, never slept on a bed. She slept in the backseat of her mom's car since she was born, or she couch dived once in a while. This is a true story. It just blows me away. Well, they finally got a house that little Haley could sleep in, and so I was super excited, not knowing what to expect, but I'm going to bring this child to bed. And so we showed up and walked in the house, and Haley didn't know why we were there, but I'd seen poverty before and I'd seen homelessness before, Jody, but I'd never seen it through the eyes of a 6-year-old, right? And that's who we were there to serve. So when I walked into this house and noticed there was nothing, the only thing, I mean, no table, no couch, no TV, the only thing in the house was a can of soup sitting on a hot plate that was resting on one of those, milk crates.
Mhm.
That was it. And I was just, I mean, in the eyes of a 6-year-old, I thought this girl would be devastated, but she was so happy. Like, I'm like, what's your problem? Don't you see where you're at? But she was so happy, and she was excited to show me her first ever bedroom. I mean, it was just great. And so we walked back there, and you can imagine. I mean, everybody, it was holes in the carpet, and the wallpaper was ripped. It wasn't anything to be super proud of, right? But for her, I mean, there's no door on the closet. I mean, and you could see some used toys that certainly people gave her. It was a challenge, but nothing prepared me, Jody, for when I walked in that room, whew, to look over in the corner and see a stack of clothes piled up, and that's where Haley slept. It was all her school clothes.
Wow.
Sorry. So Haley would come home from school and take her school clothes off, put her PJs on, and sleep on them. And that's what she slept on day in and day out. And I mean, I felt so many different emotions. I felt excitement. I felt almost anger, frustration, but certainly felt a lot of joy knowing why we were there. And so, as we started bringing in pieces of this bed and putting together, you could kind of see Haley once she figured it out, like what we were doing. I think it was when we brought in the mattress, she just erupted. Like I'd never seen a child come up like that to a bed, hug the bed, even kiss the bed. I mean, think about that. Kissing the bed. How many, I mean, my kids have a hard time. I'm trying a hard time getting them to bed, right? This,
Exactly.
right? This little girl is nosedive, jumping in, so excited. She's never slept in her own bed before. And if that wasn't enough, Jody, just to break your heart, right? Just to melt it. I look up at this mom. Oh, I still can see her face. I mean, 6 years of tears just pouring down this young single mom's face. And I was raised by a single mom. Like, my parents divorced when I was 12, 13. And even though I was a little older than little Haley, I knew what every single one of those freaking tears meant, and to be able to help. I learned right then, man, this is way more than just a bed. This is way more than just a night's sleep for this little Haley. I mean, this is family centered stuff. I mean, that mom now doesn't have to worry about where her daughter, whether she's getting a good night's sleep, whether she's awake and ready for school. There's all sorts of studies and research done on sleep deprivation and what that causes, and the moods and the behavior, and let alone think about it on the practical side. Little Haley, she couldn't have a sleepover. She didn't have a bed. And how embarrassing that can be for some of these kids. And they didn't really own anything. And that's one thing I wanted to make sure Haley knew, and all the kids that we deliver beds to. This is yours. This is not your parents'. It's not your brothers and sisters. Oftentimes we see that, right? They share beds.
Mm-hmm.
This is your bed, And so it was a moment that, for the lack of a better word or phrase, it changed my heart in an instant. I'm a big farm kid from Idaho. I love hunting and fishing and college football on Saturdays and all this stuff, blah blah blah. And with a snap of a finger, with a tear coming off this lady's face and the smile on this little girl, it all changed. None of that mattered to me anymore. I didn't care whether I was going fishing Saturday or if I missed the Boise State game or whatever. I just thought about, okay, how many other kids are out there, and I know now how to solve that problem. We had about a 30-minute drive home. Me and my buddy Jordan, who is now our executive director. We didn't really say much to each other. We were just overwhelmed. And I remember that I think the first word I said when I got home was, you know what? No kid is going to sleep on the floor in my town if I have anything to do with it. And that motto now becomes our mission statement. And it's important because the mission statement that we have, it's meant to be said by the community member, not the organization telling someone what we do, but rather the volunteer telling us how they're going to support our mission. No kid sleeps on the floor in our town. We want our town to be everybody's town. And that's really the backbone of what I wanted Sleep in Heavenly Peace. At the time, it wasn't called that, by the way. I got home and my wife's like, well, you got to call it something. What are you going to, because we wanted to do more and more, right? I was still getting from my post, I was still getting all these stories, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to do something, right? So I said, I got the perfect name, Beds for Babes. Nope, not a good name.
No.
Not a good Google search, by the way.
No. That's hysterical. Oh my
Yeah, so being Christmas time and Silent Nights, it's what a classic hymn and classic song. Sleep in Heavenly Peace. It really said what we wanted the child to do, and what we wanted to leave behind was an opportunity for that child to sleep in just heavenly peace, right? Whatever that means to you, I think it all sums up to the same meaning as these kids just have a good night's sleep.
Yeah. That safety, that feeling of comfort, that feeling,
Yeah.
it does become their new best friend. It does have such meaning in their life. I mean, when you
Yeah.
remember your childhood bed, it is very important. It leads to comfort. The book is coming. The book is coming. Today is the Day Live It will be published in late January 2026. Go to todayisthedayliveit.com to sign up and be the first to know when pre-orders are available. Live It is the Today's the Day Changemaker story. A story that began with one bold decision I made to spark a movement and create a platform for authentic connection and community. It showcases how a single choice can shift the trajectory of one life and ripple outward to transform the lives of many. Within these pages, you'll hear from 30 changemakers across the globe, from California to Uganda, sharing their voices, their defining shifts, and the impact they've made by choosing courage over fear, even when it seemed impossible. This isn't just a book. It's an invitation for you to believe in the power of one voice, your own. Stay tuned for the official author reveal coming soon. And don't forget to sign up at todayisthedayliveit.com so you don't miss your chance to pre-order. Because today is the day. Live It is more than a book. It's a movement. So you took it from there and you left your full-time job, right? I mean, and you went totally into doing this head first. So, just briefly, what did that look like now? And I ask you this question because I'm kind of asking you from the point of view of somebody's listening saying, I have this thing that I want to transition to. I have no idea how to do it. I feel this calling. What advice are
Yep.
you telling them through your story?
Oh, trust me, it's not an easy one. We all know this, right? That I had the same question. This was 2012, so about 2014 we decided to be a nonprofit. It was not even a hint of, is it a possibility to do this full time? It was a dream, don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to get paid doing this. I love doing it, and I wish I could do it full time. But that's not a reality. At least it wasn't for me at first.
Right.
For me, in my experience, it was thrust a little bit upon me. I spent a lot of time doing this. I would take vacations, my own work vacations, because I did it for 8 years with a full time job. It just got so big and more people were involved, and I realized the importance of it, and I would just invest so much time. My bosses were noticing, right? I don't think my performance was down. It's just, and I can't blame them as a guy that runs businesses and has employees. I want them to be focused on their job, and although, well, I'll just say I wasn't, not fully, anyways. And being my dad, it was my stepdad. He knew me better than I knew me, and he's like, "Listen, you don't do things, half whatever. You're all in, and I can tell, you're struggling with this, and you probably need to make a decision whether you want to continue working here or you need to focus 100% in that." And at the time, man, it seemed like this ultimatum that was just devastating to me. And no, I look back at it more as I'm grateful for him to push me in that direction. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that it didn't matter. I live in a shed. This was fulfilling.